Throughout history, there have been thousands of horror movies. Some good, some bad, some even forgettable. But there have also been some that are simply unforgettable. These are the ones that I believe everyone should experience at least once in their life. So join me today as I rank the top 10 horror movies everyone should see before they die on this episode of Ranking Rumble. Welcome back to WWH. My name is Andrew Dreamer. There are some horror movies that are so important to the genre that they garner respect no matter what you think of them. What I mean by that is you may not necessarily enjoy the movie, but you respect what it does and what it did for the genre as a whole. They may have ushered in a new era, completely changed the game. It's like how Austin's King of the Ring promo from 1996 ushered in the Attitude Era.
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass.
Some horror movies have done that for the genre. Sometimes things get stale and you have to mix it up a bit. All it takes is someone with a lot of creativity and passion to bring that forth. Or maybe they don't change the genre necessarily. Maybe they are just so damn effective that they stick around in your mind. These are the movies that I want to focus on today. We're going to look at 10 of them, and I've got to be honest, I struggled a lot to narrow this list down to just 10. There are just so many that I wanted to include, but I just couldn't. So go ahead and let me know in the comments what horror movie you think everyone should see at least once. Before we dive in though, be sure to body slam that subscribe button as hard as you can so you never miss any of the hard-hitting, chill-inducing 5-star matches we have here at WWH. Also, check out some merchandise and consider becoming a member of the channel. It is bell time though, so grab your popcorn and make your way to your seat. Let's head down to the ring. Starting us off at number 10 is Dracula from 1931. This film is important for several reasons. One, this is early on in the talkies era of cinema. If you don't know what that means, essentially it's just the era where films began to use sound and include audible dialogue. Something else Dracula did was basically set the standard for what vampire movies would be from then on. Yes, details are changed and rules are added or removed, but the basic premise typically persists. We might not have gotten any of that without this film. Dracula was also the beginning of Hollywood's first cinematic universe, which of course was the Universal Monsters. This actually might be my favorite cinematic universe as well. I just have a lot of fun with it. I probably watch all these movies, or at least the main ones, once a year. Look, I understand if these really old movies aren't for you, but I absolutely think you should watch it at least once in your life, even if it's just to appreciate how far filmmaking has come since then. It really is wild to see how techniques and styles have changed over the years. Coming in at number 9 is The Exorcist. I've got to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of this movie. It's no secret that possession movies are not my favorite. They just don't do it for me. But regardless of that, everybody needs to watch The Exorcist at least once in their life. I mean, this is what every possession movie since 1973 has tried to replicate. I think most of them honestly just get repetitive, but The Exorcist set that standard, and what it set out to accomplish, it did very well. I have to respect that and appreciate it even though I'm not a huge fan. I mean, it was the first horror movie to ever be nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars. It didn't win, but it was nominated, which is a huge feat. Furthermore, this movie is just really effective. It still terrifies people 51 years later. It has some great performances, really good direction, haunting sound, and an atmosphere that permeates fear. Like I said, you need to see this movie at least once, even if possession movies aren't your cup of tea. It's about appreciation. Next up at number 8, we have The Shining. It's pretty well known that Stephen King isn't a huge fan of this adaptation, but honestly, who cares? I think this movie is really good. Again, it's not something that I'm going to watch a whole lot, but it's so well made and beautifully shot. Jack Nicholson and Shelley Duvall deliver some glorious performances. Glorious! Now, I definitely don't condone the way Kubrick treated Duvall on set. I think there are much better ways to get a good performance out of actors without mistreating them. But The Shining is one of those movies that transcended the horror genre. It's well known by pretty much everybody, and I'm sure just about everybody has seen it. But if you haven't, you definitely should. Our number 7 entrant is Night of the Living Dead. This is one of my favorite zombie movies of all time, and beyond that, it's the most important one, at least in my mind. I said in my ranking of zombie movies that this movie catapulted zombies into superstardom, and I still believe that to be the truth. This is not just a movie about zombies killing people. It's really about how we, as humans, react in these types of situations. That's what makes it so interesting. That's what makes it so important and worthy of remembrance. It's a reminder that we have to stay in touch with who we really are. That's why you should watch this movie. Romero created an absolute classic with this one. At number 6, we have Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. I have said on numerous occasions that this is a movie that I respect more than I actually enjoy. What does that mean, though? Well, it means that Psycho was one of those game changers. It was one of the earliest slasher movies, and it brought a whole new feel to horror movies as a whole. You had really interesting characters and a twist that, back in 1960, was extremely shocking to audiences. I have so much admiration and respect for this movie. I love this movie, but I don't love to watch this movie all that often. I just prefer what slashers evolved into more than this. But it is 100% a movie that everyone needs to see at some point in their life. Our number 5 entrant in this ranking rumble is Saw. Another movie that sort of changed the game. Lee Winnell and James Wan helped to usher in a new type of horror movie. This subgenre has been dubbed torture porn, and there were definitely others around this time, but Saw was by far the most mainstream. While the franchise got more and more brutal as it went on, this first film was a bit different. It wasn't as gory or brutal as the sequels. Now, don't get me wrong, it's still pretty brutal, but nowhere near as much as the later entries. No, this first movie had well-developed characters and genuinely tense moments that felt organic. Not to mention it had one of the best twists in horror history. It's weird to think about now, but back in 2004, almost nobody saw it coming. And on the slim chance you haven't seen this movie somehow, I'm not going to spoil it. But please go watch this movie if you haven't. It's a wild ride, and I don't think you'll be disappointed, even if you have preconceived notions about the subgenre. Just give it a chance. Jigsaw wants to play a game, and you know what? I bet he'd get along great with Triple H.
Time to play the game!
Coming in at number 4 is Jaws. This movie terrified me as a kid. It's the reason I don't go in the ocean. It's the reason that I'm scared to death of sharks. But this movie is fantastic in my opinion. It's near perfect. I have a lot of nostalgia for it too. It's weird to me loving a movie so much that scared me so much and had such an impact on me. But I do love it. And I think that every soul on this planet needs to experience it. Spielberg, even though he was very young at the time, made a masterpiece. You may not hold it in the same regard as I do, and that's fine, but you should at least respect it. Hell, Jaws is the reason the term summer blockbuster became a thing. That's pretty huge in my book. Number 3 in this ranking rumble is Scream. The 90s were a weird time for horror. Slashers were no longer dominating the genre. In fact, the entire genre was on a bit of a downward trajectory. But that all changed in 1996 with a little film called Scream. This movie completely turned the horror world upside down. It brought about a new type of slasher movie. Meta-commentary became the norm, and then came all of the imitators. And I think that if you have a bunch of people trying to imitate your film, you know it had a huge impact. I don't imagine there are many horror fans out there who haven't seen Scream, but if you haven't, what are you waiting for? This is one of my favorite movies of all time. And beyond all that, I think this is a movie that transcended horror. You had people who weren't horror fans watching this movie. It was huge, and that might even still be underselling it. I have nothing bad to say about this movie, but just based on its impact alone, it deserves to be seen by everyone at least once. It really is so good. Coming in at number 2 is The Thing. Okay, so these last two entrants come down to personal preference more than anything, and that's not to say they're not important films, because they are, but I just have a different level of love for them. The Thing wasn't received very well when it was first released in 1982. We all know that. Over the years, though, it has become one of the most beloved horror films of all time. And if you ask me, it deserves every bit of that love and more. This is a movie I'm always recommending to people who aren't the biggest horror fans. The atmosphere, the paranoia, the tension, it all comes together to create this spectacular story of isolation and fear. This is another movie that dives into the human reaction in terrifying situations. The Thing is so much more than body horror. It's more than the gore. It's more than the special effects. It's a character study that's executed to near perfection in my mind. They truly don't get much better than this. And that is why I believe everybody on planet Earth needs to see it. You need to experience this masterpiece from my favorite horror director of all time, John Carpenter. Our number 1 entrant today is Halloween. I know that comes as a surprise to absolutely no one if you've been around the channel for a while, and I know I probably sound like a broken record at this point, but no movie has ever meant more to me personally than Halloween. And I also want to say, I understand why this movie might not be on other people's lists, but I do have reasons that aren't just based around how much I enjoy it. In my mind, though, this is actually one of the most important films of all time. But let's get into the reasons now. First, Halloween kickstarted the slasher craze that lasted from the late 70s into the mid 80s. There were a near infinite number of imitators, including the original Friday the 13th. That's admitted by the series creators themselves. It wasn't the first slasher, though, or even the first to use some of the techniques, but it is by far the most popular one. Halloween was made for about $300,000 and it grossed $47 million at the box office, making it one of the most successful independent films of all time. It has also given us one of the most recognizable themes and characters in all of cinema history. I mean, when you hear that song, everyone knows exactly what it's from. The series also is still living on today, so whether you like it or not, you gotta respect it for that at least. The truth is, I could ramble on all day about how important this movie is, but I'm gonna leave it there. For all of the reasons I listed, and because it's my favorite movie of all time, Halloween is number 1 movie I believe everyone needs to see. But there you have it. Those are 10 horror movies everyone should see before they die. Let me know down in the comments if you think that I left any off this list. If you're interested in Redcon 1 products, I have a discount code that you can use to save 20% off of your entire order. Be sure to check that out. You can also find all of my merchandise available at prowrestlingtees.com/AndrewDreamer or right under this video. Also, head over to Patreon and consider becoming a member over there, or if you would like, you can become a member right here on YouTube. All of the links are in the description below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss any of the action here at WWH. Now that we've talked about some horror movies that you should absolutely see before you die, check out my last video, which you can watch right now by clicking the link that is on your screen. And remember, in the squared circle of horror, there are no countouts for nightmares. My name is Andrew Dreamer, and this is Wrestling with Horror.